Hey guys, welcome to this week's micro training. We're going to be talking about helping learners be active participants in the learning process. And again, what I mean by that, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but it's what can we do as teachers to help our students engage more in the lesson and kind of focus them a little bit more. This is something that I learned very early on, that if I had students that were losing focus, if they came and just sat in class, it wasn't the material's fault because the scriptures are amazing, right? But I realized that there were things that I could do to engage the students a little bit more. Now, my normal type of teaching that I like to do is discussion, question, answer, but that's not what really speaks out or calls to a lot of students. And so I've learned that, okay, I'll do that once or twice, and then I've got to do something completely different, or I've got to do something here that's a little bit different. But if you have students that you might feel aren't engaged, or you've got other students that are really active, but they're not focused, maybe switching up and doing something completely different would help. So on Tuesday, for example, well, 2 weeks ago, I had a class that bombed, right? I did not like it. I think I mentioned that in one of the training videos, but it did not go very well. And so last week I thought, okay, I need to do something a little bit different. And so I did an activity that I call rip and run. It's not my favorite activity. It's one that I'll put eventually in the list of all these, just teaching ideas. But it's one where the students get out of their seats, they're working in teams, they're kind of competing against others. But again, the trick is they're in the scriptures the whole time, finding truths, finding answers, coming up and telling me an answer or a truth, and then I'm just send them back with another question. And so there's that little bit of competition, but they're in the scriptures. Again, it's not the type of activity that me as a student would like a lot. But when it was done, one of my best students in the class, who is like golden, right? She will sit with you through any lesson. She's raising her hand, she's commenting. When we got done with Rip and Run, she came up and she was like, "Thank you. That was so fun. I loved getting out of my seat. I loved doing this." And so it was a type of lesson that really spoke to her. And yet we were in the scriptures the whole time. When I got home, my wife asked my sons, "Hey, how was seminary today?" And they're like, "Oh, it was really good. We did this." And she looked at me and she's like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "I sacrificed a pawn." Right. And that's my way of talking with my wife, where she just knows that what I'm saying is I did something that I didn't think was very successful or effective, but I did it because I knew that I needed to make that one move. So next week I can do something a little bit better. It's a chess idea, of sacrificing a pawn. But maybe I should change my mindset, because again, the students loved it. It wasn't they didn't leave thinking, well, that was a wasted day. And so here's some ideas as we're talking about helping learners be active participants. Sometimes what you can do is change up the way you're teaching, or just do something completely different, and it really grabs their attention. For example, last week I had a couple of you reach out to me and you're like, "How did you do these little floaty things right here?" Right? It was something different that you hadn't seen before. And just that little thing there, it caught your attention. This is called Prezi, Prezi. Check it out. There's a little cost involved if you want an actual licensed one, but I think they've got a free version. And it's fun because it's just something different. Okay. But let me just share my screen for just a half a second, and we're going to talk about, again, helping learners be an active participant in the learning process. So right here, this is from the Teaching and Learning Handbook. Let me go up here. It says, for many students, putting forth such effort to learn from the scriptures may seem unfamiliar and somewhat difficult. However, teachers can help them understand, accept, and fulfill their role in gospel learning. Teachers can help students learn how to take an active role in their spiritual learning, both in class and at home, by encouraging them to, and then these are just some examples. This is not a definitive list, but these are some things that you could do to help students have a more active role in the gospel and learning process. So the one that I like, that I mentioned already, right here: ask questions and seek for answers that help them better understand the gospel and how it applies to their lives. Share insights, experiences, and feelings. And then that last one: develop scripture study skills such as marking cross-referencing, and using scripture study aids. So today's lesson that I'm going to give you in just a minute, those are kind of the three things that I was focusing on as I was doing the lesson. It was, how can I help them seek for answers that are in the scriptures? We used a little bit of, when can you share some insights, some experiences, or some feelings? And you'll see in the notes to the lesson that I'm going to just give, just as an example, if you want to use it. But places where I'm like, make sure to encourage them to mark this or underline this. Make sure to encourage them to write in their scripture study journal or a principle in their margins. And so those are the three things that you'll see in the lesson. And again, if you want to use a lesson, it's one that's already done. If you don't want to use it, that's totally fine. But will you focus on helping them be active participants in the learning process? And then here's the why. Why do we want to do that? It's never for our benefit, right? It's not just because it makes the class go a little bit better. But it says right here, students are edified when they are led to search the words of God to discover truths about Jesus Christ and his gospel for themselves. They should be given opportunities to explain the gospel in their own words and to share and testify of what they know and feel. This helps to bring the gospel from their heads down into their hearts. As students consistently experience learning the gospel in this way, notice that, consistently learning the gospel in this way, where it can go from their head to their heart, they gain confidence in their ability to study the scriptures for themselves and learn by the Spirit. They feel a desire to apply what they are learning in their lives. They are also better prepared to explain what they believe to others and to bear testimony of the doctrine and principles of the gospel. So the different teaching technique that I'm using just as an example this week, it's nothing new. You all know it. Students know it all the time. But if you haven't used it in a while, it's a good break from just the normal type of class. And so what I'm attaching here is just a little PowerPoint that I've made that goes with Genesis 38 and 39. Most of us know the story of Genesis 39, right? This idea of Potiphar's wife and Joseph and resisting evil. Genesis 37 is Joseph being sold into Egypt. And Genesis 38 is kind of wedged right in the middle of this story of Joseph. And it seems a little out of place at first. We've got Joseph being sold into Egypt and his brothers. We've got Judah and Tamar, which is a weird, crazy story. And then we've got Joseph in Egypt, and Potiphar's wife, and going to prison. But I think what the gospel writers are doing is they are putting two stories together that are opposites to really show how good Joseph was. That while in captivity, Joseph was tempted with breaking the law of chastity. And with the chance of ever seeing his father again being like zero in Joseph's eyes at that time, he still kept the commandments. He still held on to what was true. Even though his life was crappy at that moment, he endured well. Using President Irene's example, enduring well means we keep the commandments no matter what circumstances we're placed. Now, on the other hand, his brother is a free man living in his own land with his family. And again, when given the chance to break the law of chastity, he does so. He doesn't realize that it's with his daughter-in-law at the time. And so it is a very weird story. And if we just look at 38, we're like, here's another crazy story about sex in the Old Testament. Why are they doing that? But again, it's put there so you can see by contrast of how important and how good Joseph was in keeping this law and being chaste. And so it's a great way to teach both stories together. And so in the PowerPoint that I've got attached, one second. Anyway, you'll see that in the PowerPoint, I've added some videos. I've added some just other things to help just hopefully draw in those that are visual learners. But it's going through the manual. It's still the lesson plan that's in there. It's their questions. But again, if you haven't used a PowerPoint in a long time, even though kids see PowerPoints all the time, if they're not used to seeing one in seminary, it could be a way to really draw in those people that are a little bit more visual. And so that's below. If it's of any help, I hope you use it. Please feel free to change it any way that you need to and make it yours, because that's the best way of doing it. All right, thank you very, very much. I hope to see you in your classes, and I hope you have a great week and that you enjoy spring break coming up.